Right across Newcastle and the Hunter, 2NURFM 103.7 as we take a look at some of the things happening in the world of science. We do that with our Professor of Science from the University of Newcastle, John O'Connor, who at the moment, John, you're trying to do something that we kind of think, I don't really want fungus sticking around the homestead, but it turns out that as we might think to get rid of it, you're wanting to throw more of it in the front door. Good morning.
Good morning, Mark. Yeah, I'm not sure about throwing in the front door, but yeah, it's certainly fungi. Fungi, yeah.
That's the plural, at least, yeah.
Are a really interesting species of plant, and I've heard much more detailed description of what we can use them for, but these are a couple of applications which I think are really interesting and have potential in the future. And the first is that you can grow fungi in panels, and these panels, first off, they're biodegradable. They're just plants. It's great because they don't need agricultural land. They like to grow in nice, warm, moist places, which we don't usually use for other things. But the beauty of them is that first you can grow them, nice big panels and so forth, and secondly, they're fire resistant. And so a lot of the motivation for this was after the Grenfell Tower fire. And so a group at Newcastle University in the UK have been working on this, as well as groups here in Australia at RMIT, University of New South Wales and Hong Kong Polytechnic. So there's a lot of interest in this. And the beauty of the fungus, when you make a panel out of it, is that if it gets exposed to fire, it doesn't burn, it chars, it just sort of goes back on the outside, and that creates a layer that slows down any further degradation. If it degrades further, the only thing it produces is carbon dioxide and water, whereas many other fire retardant or fire resistant panels have fairly noxious chemicals in them. So if they really get very hot, they can give off noxious chemicals. So it has this great property in terms of being a panel. I can assure you that when they make it a panel for your home, either inside or out, it's been treated so it won't grow. So
that was the next point.
I can see that on your face. Yep.
Because it's like, okay, the whole thing is natural. It looks pretty good, and the gases are more friendly for us and everything. And I'm thinking, well, hang on a minute, but just stick it in there. Is it just going to be like maybe they've been treating it with how most of us garden, where we just can't get anything to grow anyway.
Yeah. So there'll be no mushrooms growing out of the walls. You're safe there.
Good.
But the other thing is, it can be used for structural components. And the group in the UK have actually got a very interesting process of doing that. So what you do is you create a mould, and by a mould I mean something that you put things in, not the mould as in a fungus. You make a mould and you pour this mixture in, which is the spores of the fungus plus wood shavings and a few other bits and pieces to feed it, and you let it grow. But the trouble is, it also needs oxygen. And so if you make this too big, the oxygen doesn't get inside. And so what the group in the UK, led by a textile scientist, did was that they knitted a panel. They used a machine, they knitted this huge panel, and of course that's a nice open structure. So they infused this with the spores and the feed, and so the air could still permeate through it. And when you're finished, you've got this structure which, effectively you've knitted a dome, or knitted some sort of structure you want, panel if you want to, structural column, you name it. But it's actually knitted out of a good hardy wool plus a good solid infusion of fungus that will then give it its strength and its continuity.
Makes you wonder where some of these ideas come from. I mean, we obviously see kind of towards the end result of it, but who put one and one together and came up with fungi, as a fire retardant, measure in a home?
Well, the people studying fungi have been really working with this for some time. They've got some incredibly interesting properties. And in fact, from an agricultural point of view, they're a great asset because they get into some soils, and latch on to the roots. And so what they do is they extract minerals out of the soil and feed it into the roots, and the tree feeds back sugars which help it to grow. So it's a very good symbiotic relationship, but then it allows that tree to grow in areas where it might otherwise struggle. And so these studies have shown this symbiotic relationship, and many other situations where a fungus will be part of a process. In the long run, it breaks down the dead wood in a forest. The timber you'll always find fungus growing on dead trees. Helps to break that down, get it back into the soil, and produce a better long living soil.
Just another way to use the natural process, the natural world around us for our own benefit, which sounds pretty good, John. As always, thanks for coming, and we'll talk to you in a fortnight from here.
Thanks, Mark.
Our Professor of Science from the University of Newcastle, John O'Connor, taking a look at fungi this morning at 2NURFM 103.7.
A broadcast service of the University of Newcastle.